Hello, everyone. How are things going? Hey, Adam. Hi, Hannah. I think that actually, yeah. Hi, everyone. It's really great to see you here. Yes, I do have a different camera angle today, and actually, I'm a little bit skeptical of my internet connection today. So if you ever hear me cutting out a little bit or any errors in the connection, yeah, I know. It's a big bummer. So let me know and I'll turn off my camera and that will help with the connection. So definitely just let me know in the chat. Just say, we can't hear you or poor connection or something like that. Here you go. Yeah, so for reference, everyone, yeah, apparently there's some kind of animated character that I look a lot like according to Midby I-75, but yeah. Your mouth is out of sync with your mouth. That is a very complicated idea. I'm not sure how to understand that, but thank you, Adam. Thank you for the feedback. Jimmy Neutron, that's a new one. I don't know if I look like Jimmy Neutron, but perhaps, maybe. So everyone, anyway, thank you so much for coming today. It's really great to see you all here and to see such a great turnout. What we're going to be talking about today is creating a business plan. And creating a business plan is something that is a really good skill to have as an entrepreneur and as someone who creates things. And the reason why this applies to Local Hack Day Share is because, you know, as part of our three-phase approach to Local Hack Day, the first is to learn something, and the second one is to build something, and the third is to share. And so creating a business in a way is like sharing your idea, you know, using capital and using commercial means. Let's start a Blahaj business. I'm pretty sure there's already a Blahaj business. IKEA. Yes, in a sense, it is learn Blahaj share, but you know, we have to build something. You know, we can't just Blahaj all the time. So that's kind of what this is about. IKEA V2, I love it. So everyone, I'm going to share a resource with you about business planning. And can anyone in the chat tell me a basic summary or a quick sentence about what a business plan actually is? Like, why would you have a business plan? Let's see if anyone has any ideas in the chat. It seems like someone says, Amino says, a future commercial plan. I like the idea here of a future plan where we're talking about what we might be accomplishing in the future. And Melon Yellow says it determines the goals of a company or a startup. And that's another very key attribute of the business plan. And of course, the very literal definition, a business plan is a plan for a business. Yes, exactly. So let me share my screen with you, and I'm going to stop sharing my camera so that the bandwidth doesn't get too bad on us. Okay, everyone. So the United States government publishes or has an agency called the Small Business Administration. Sorry, everyone. Can you hear me now? Hopefully you can hear me. Let me know if you can hear me. Hopefully it's a little bit better now. All right, very good. So I posted in the chat, hopefully you got the link to the Small Business Administration. This is an agency of the United States federal government. And basically their goal is to help small business owners get started. And so we're going to go through this ourselves to learn about the basic aspects of a business plan, and you can follow along. So the Small Business Administration defines a business plan as the foundation of your business. And they say that it is a way to learn how to, it's some kind of template that you're going to use to plan out the activities of your business. So what it's going to do is serve as a guide through each stage of starting and managing your business. And you'll use it to refer to throughout the business process. And there's a few different types of business plans. So the most common is a traditional business plan, which uses a standard structure and encourages you to go into detail in each section, and requires a lot more work and tends to be longer. And there's also a lean startup plan, which is less common, but summarizes the key elements of your plan. And they can take as little as 1 hour to make and be typically only 1 page. So here's what the Small Business Administration says about those two types of common business plans. And today, we're going to be focusing on the lean startup plan, because it's something that we can do in a very short amount of time, like a hackathon level of time. 1 hour is within our range of time in a hackathon. And so I hope it'll be useful to you all with your projects. And actually, what we're going to do today as our deliverable, for our challenge, is to create a lean startup plan for one of our hacking projects. And I'm going to do it for one of my own projects that I created a long time ago. So Hannah posts this really helpful link here about how to check into this event. This is very important information as well. If you haven't already done so, checking into the event is going to be crucial. It'll help you get points for your guild and for your individual account. Okay, everyone. So let's learn about the elements of a business plan. So the first element is actually an executive summary. And maybe you've heard about executive summaries before, but the idea with an executive summary is that we're delivering information to someone in a succinct way, because executives don't tend to have as much time on their hands to read about the details of a project. So an executive summary will briefly tell the reader what the company is and why it will be successful. So everything that you write in the business plan should refer back to, the structure and function of your company, and also the key ingredients that will make sure that it's successful from a commercial perspective. So you'll want to create information about your product or service, the basic information about the leadership team, employees, and location. And you also want to include financial information and high-level growth plans if you plan to ask for financing. So this last one might be a little confusing to some people. What does it mean to have a high-level growth plan if you ask for financing? So what this means is that a company may have a growth plan in which actually they're not making money for the first few years. It's actually very typical of it's very typical of a company to not make money in the first startup stages. And so at this stage, the company needs financing. And the financing the individuals who might wish to finance want to see that there's a high-level growth plan, meaning that you have a plan to actually become profitable in the future, right, by growing the business. So that's what we're talking about here. I see we have a question here. Does this stream count for a challenge? And the answer to that one is yes. So you can check in and receive a point for this stream. And also what we're going to be doing is making a business plan for one of our own DevPost projects. And so that's kind of the objective for this one. Okay, so the first subsection after the executive summary is a company description. So this is going to provide detailed information about the company, such as the problems that it solves. And you want to explain the competitive advantage that makes the business a success. Does anybody know what a competitive advantage is in business? Does anyone know what a competitive advantage refers to? Yeah, Adam is correct about the fact that there's a week-long challenge to make a business plan. And that's what we're going to do today, is we're going to actually fulfill that requirement. Some people say, someone says something different is what a competitive advantage is. And someone else says that it's the thing that separates you process-wise from the competition. And another person says a type of unique identifier. That's a very programming-centric description. And better features as compared to the latter. I think these are all really good definitions of competitive advantage. A competitive advantage is something that you have that the competition does not. It could be a capability of producing a good. It could be providing a unique service. But what a competitive advantage is a way to differentiate yourself in the marketplace as a business. So for example, if you're the only company that has a search engine, then that's an obvious competitive advantage, because no other company can provide the same service that you have. And maybe that's what Google was at some point, right? Google was the only search engine, maybe. But nowadays, Google has different competitive advantages. For instance, Google has one of the largest search indexes. So it could maybe provide more results. And it also has a unique algorithm and certain ad structures to sell advertising. And Anne of the Night says that Google has the Dino game. That's right. So the Dino game sets them apart from the competition. That's actually definitely a competitive advantage, although maybe somewhat of a more minor competitive advantage, definitely a competitive advantage for Google. Okay, and for a tech company, the perfect location for your store is something that is a little bit probably not applicable in the same sense. How would you define a location for your store in terms of a tech company, or maybe a more digital project or event? What would you say the location of your store analogy is for a tech company, or some company that exists on the internet? So someone says that Silicon Valley might be a particular response. That's true if you maybe are located in that area, but I think this is the better answer here, is a website. So your website, your SEO, if you've ever heard that term, it refers to the ability to find you in a search engine. Your branding on a website design, all of these components, good customer service, these are all aspects of the of where your store, quote unquote, is located. I mean, Amazon is not actually located in a physical area, but the website itself is easy to find, it's easy to navigate, and it's easy to purchase goods. So that's part of this location. All right, let's move on to the second element here, which is market analysis. You'll need a good understanding of your industry outlook and target market. Let's break down this sentence here. So industry outlook refers to the ability for an industry in the global economy to either grow or shrink over time. So an industry with a positive outlook appears to be a growing industry. So an example of a growing industry is the tech industry. And the green industry, you know, the renewable energy industry. Those are examples of growing industries. And there are also industries that have a negative outlook or a poor outlook. And an example of an industry with a poor outlook would be the coal mining industry, which is an industry of a poor outlook. And the other part of the sentence says a target market. Does anybody know what a target market refers to in this sense? So Nicholas Karimi says, will the slides be available at the end of the stream? Yes, definitely. You can find them at this link I just posted in the chat. So we have some people suggesting what a target market might be. And IUC XAM says that it is the people that you sell to. That's exactly right. It's the people you're selling to currently, and it's also the people who you might like to sell to in the future. So it's not necessarily people who are buying your product now, but it could refer to anyone who you think would make use of your product. So for instance, you know, Netflix used to cater to people who had a DVD player at home. You know, it was people who had a DVD player and a mailing address, and you could basically send them a DVD in the mail, and they would plug it into their TV, their DVD set. But as time went on, Netflix, and to do that, Netflix needed, you know, they needed a postal system that was robust. They needed warehouses to sell, so they could only sell to certain markets. But now Netflix sells online as a streaming service. So they can sell to people who live in places where the postal service is not as robust. They can sell to customers who don't have a DVD player. So the target market for them has changed intentionally. And so it's kind of related to the industry outlook in that regard. Okay. The next section is organization and management. This is kind of I call this sort of a fun part, which is to tell your reader how your company will be structured and who will run it. So you can kind of think about who are the people involved in the project and form some kind of organizational chart. I think it's kind of fun to you know, outline all of this because, you know, it gives everyone sort of a more formal role in the process. And while this advice generally to describe the legal structure of your business is useful, the specific advice here is given by the Small Business Administration. So it's not going to be applicable to you if you're not in the United States. So I would kind of ignore adding a legal structure to your business plan for now. And you'll see that when we go over the example in the second half of this stream. And yeah, another way you can augment this section is to include a resume or a CV for the key members of your team. Does anyone have any questions about these first three sections or 4 sections? We have executive summary, company description, market analysis, and organization and management. Does anybody have a question about anything particular about these sections? We're going to look at some examples later on, which will make it more clear exactly how to put this into practice. But for now, I just wanted to go over these in broad strokes. Okay. Let's move on to the next section. So the next section is a service or product line. So this is sort of getting at the core of what your business is offering. Oh, someone says, does market analysis also have threat detection? Definitely. So there's a technique in business analysis called SWOT, and I'll spell it in the chat, SWOT, and it stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so a SWOT analysis is something that is, sort of breaking down all of the different aspects. Yeah, IUCXAM says it as well in the chat. It's breaking down the different, the sort of cost-benefit analysis of your market analysis. And so there's a lot of literature on SWOT technique. If you're interested more in learning about how to analyze a market from a cost-benefit perspective, I would recommend looking at SWOT analysis. There's a lot of really good resources online that you can find just through a simple Google. It's a fairly common technique. But yeah, you would definitely want to identify threats. Like, let's think about, the fact that if you wanted to go into some kind of mall, the mall industry, you want to build a new mall. Well, if you want to build a new mall, you have to be aware of the threat of e-commerce, right? So e-commerce is a growing industry with a positive outlook, and you want to be aware of that threat to your potential business. So it's important to take into account the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in a cost-benefit analysis. That was a good question. Thank you for that question. That's a good point. So let's move on to the next section. We've talked a little bit about service or product line before. It's essentially just explaining what the product life cycle looks like. So how do customers get engaged with your product or service? How do they stay engaged? What kind of value does it add? And what are they willing to pay for it? And you want to share your plans for intellectual property. So you may have a copyright already. In the United States, a copyright, and I believe internationally as well, but especially in the United States, a copyright is immediately applied to your work upon its creation. And whereas a patent is something that you need to file a more extensive process, go through some kind of formal legal process in the country that you're doing business. So you want to think about how you're going to protect your idea through intellectual property rights. And the next section here is marketing and sales. So as the Small Business Administration says, it's definitely true that there's no single way to approach a marketing strategy. And in the case of an online business or some kind of tech business, you want to kind of leverage the resources online to do marketing. So there's many different, almost mini industries, like in for example, Facebook marketing, Google AdSense, and a lot of people much more qualified would be able to tell you more about these things because it's a very complicated industry. But there are many different techniques you can use, like the ones I've listed, and it should evolve to change and fit your unique needs. So you may start out with more general advertising in an inexpensive format like Google AdSense. And over time, you might learn more about your market and learn more about your customers and make greater investments in specific advertising campaigns. So you'll want to describe how you're going to attract and retain customers with attention to who your customers are, which we've already identified in a previous section of the business plan, market analysis. Okay, you've already, in a sense, and company description in a sense. Okay. And these two sections, these two last sections, are fairly connected. The first is funding request, and the second is financial projections. So for the funding request, you would outline the requirements that you have for funding. So you may be asking for a lump sum of money, or you may be asking for some kind of regular installment of money in over the next few years. You know, in this description, they say over the next 5 years. And there's also a section that says specify whether you want debt or equity. Does anyone know the difference between the terms debt and equity? This is an important thing to remember if you're asking for funding for your business. All right, while I'm waiting for that to happen, for people to answer that question, I'm going to answer some questions in the chat. So one question is, if you don't mind, should a startup include its expansion strategy in the business plan? Yes, it should. And this goes back to a previous section, which was the company's growth plan. So when you say expansion strategy, I am taking that to mean that you're talking about the high-level growth plan. And I think that's something you could include in the executive summary. And it's also something that you could include in other aspects, like showing about the industry outlook. So a growing industry, of course, presumes that there will be growth in the company. You can talk about financial projections as well. So this is really another important place where you can talk about your expansion strategies. You want to explain your projections. And so when you're explaining your projections, you can outline the expansions that you're going to go through to meet those projections. And there's another person asking, what are some of the best ways to advertise without spending a lot of money on marketing? That's another great question. I would recommend online advertising to a user, or rather a small business owner who is trying to advertise effectively without spending a lot of money. There's a great Facebook ads course that Facebook provides to learn about Facebook advertising for free. And there's also a course where you can learn about Google AdSense, kind of a YouTube series. So I'm going to type these terms into the chat so that you can all learn more about them on your own terms. But it's good to learn about some of the common social media and online advertising venues. The reason why I say these are a good way to advertise effectively without spending a lot of money is because the revenue generation from a social media advertisement relies on the user actually engaging with the ad. So you're only going to pay if someone actually engages with your ad. And another really useful thing in social media marketing is the ability to have a high level of analytical information about your advertisement. So you might have information about how often people are clicking on your advertisement, and also the demographics of the people who are clicking and engaging. So you'll know about are people from China, or people from Canada, or people from Brazil engaging more in my advertisement? Is it young people or older people? You know, so those are useful information to know. So I would really recommend getting interested in those if you're wanting to learn more about it. And someone else asks another great question. What if startup is an ideation phase and not generating revenue? Would they be able to get funding smoothly? So there are certain funding sources for startups that are in ideation phase. It's mostly in venture capital. And so in these cases, a company without much revenue generation history will be able to present their ideas. But really, to convince someone you would like, who you would like to give you an investment, you usually need to show some kind of potential at the very least to generate revenue. So I would recommend to a person who's in ideation phase to try and get some test customers. Just try and set up a website where you can ask people to subscribe to a mailing list, to learn more about the project. And then you've got a list of potential customers. You could send out a survey saying, what would you be willing to pay for a service that did X, Y, and Z? And then you can get some more information about your customers. So it's by no means necessary to actually generate revenue in order to get your company funded. That's completely false. But it is definitely beneficial to have hard facts about what your customer base looks like for a certain project. Okay, those are some really great questions, and I'm going to move on to the answer to my original proposition, which was what's the difference between equity and debt. And Nicholas Karimi has a very good explanation here. So equity is an agreement with the funders to own a portion of the business, while debt is when a person or entity lends your business some money with an agreement to repay with interest. So that's a very good explanation. Equity is you actually selling a portion of your business to secure funds. You're selling a portion of your business in exchange for cash. And so the transaction is in a sense net zero because you've sold some of your equity to another partner. With debt, on the other hand, it's not net zero because you are actually gaining assets. You're gaining cash, but it comes with the obligation that you pay those debts later. So you're not giving up any equity in the business to secure a debt. Okay, everyone, so that's the difference between debt and equity, and you want to make sure that you understand that very well when you're going in and asking for funding, because if someone says, I will offer you $500,000 in loans, that's an example of a debt offer. But if the person offers you $500,000 for a 10% stake, that means they're referring to equity. So I'll type that in the chat as well. A loan equals debt and a stake equals equity. So these are terms that people will use in a negotiation for funding. And you want to understand the difference when you're proposing a funding model for your business. Okay. And it helps to give a detailed description of how you'll use your funds. All right, the final section of the business plan is the financial projections. So in the case of a financial projection, your goal is to convince the reader that your business is stable and will be a financial success. So as I said earlier, this can involve many different lines of argument, from having an actual revenue stream already set up to just identifying your customers and learning about their willingness to pay for a service. But regardless of which path your business takes or which stage your business is in, it's going to be invaluable for you to understand and be able to prove that your business is going to be fiscally stable. If your business is already established, like it says here, you can include some income statements. And this is going to be something where a private equity firm, for example, would be interested in your business if you have some kind of already established business. On the other hand, if you don't, like I said, there are other means of getting funding, such as venture capital. And you'll want to provide a prospective financial outlook for the next 5 years. So that means that you're forecasting out your income statements, your balance sheets, your cash flow statements, your capital expenditure budgets. These are all very complex terms that we haven't covered today, and I'm afraid we won't be able to cover in great detail. But there are a number of good resources online to learn more about these things. What you'll want to do is search on Google for financial accounting. Okay, so you'll want to go to financial accounting. Yeah, I think Yusuf says this. Yeah, I think there's some kind of feedback that I can't eliminate. Apologies for that. Okay, so that's pretty much what we have for the elements of a business plan. Now we're going to look at some example business plans that are provided to us by the Small Business Administration, and then we're going to actually create one of our own. So there's these two different traditional business plans that are provided to us. I'm not actually going to look at those with you today, but if you're interested in looking at them later, feel free to. But what I'm going to look at today is the lean startup format, because I think this is something that's very relevant to actually the types of things that we're going to be doing with hackathon projects. So a lean startup format business plan has some of the very same elements of a traditional one. Key partnerships is, again, thinking about who you're going to work with to run your business, including some of the people in the business. The key activities is, again, identifying a competitive advantage in the market. The key resources is, who are the people who are actually in your business. And this is kind of an interesting note about business resources that might be available to women, veterans, Native Americans, etc. If you fall into one of these categories, or your government has some kind of particular programs for people who are typically underrepresented in the business community, I would definitely recommend investigating those resources, because a lot of governments are interested in encouraging people from these kinds of backgrounds to create businesses, and they've got some pretty great programs. The value proposition is, once again, about competitive advantage and market analysis. You can see, what are you bringing new to the market and what exists in the market. Customer relationships, thinking about how the customer will interact with the business, sort of the life cycle of the product, as we talked about earlier. More about market analysis in the customer segment section. The channels of how you're communicating with the customer, costs and revenues, which corresponds to the financial projections portion of a traditional business plan. And so let's look at this example for a lean business plan. And interestingly, you can sometimes get free business counseling in the United States, probably in other regions too. But I would definitely recommend looking at this website in greater detail after the stream, because there's a lot of really great resources on the Small Business Administration, even if you're not a United States resident. It's just got a lot of good information that's just generally good business information. So let's I have a mouse trying to, yeah, exactly. There's some kind of, that's kind of funny. Someone asks me a little off the topic question, but do you have any suggestions for investing in share market business? I'm not actually sure what share market business is. Maybe okay. I just looked it up now about buying part ownership. Yeah, this is something that a lot of there's an entire industry of people who purchase equity in businesses, and I don't have any particular advice, but yeah, maybe there are people in the comments who know more about this than I do. Someone else asks, I'm a bit lost. Will there be any code involved in this one, or are we just writing a business plan? We're just going to write a business plan today. We're not going to do any coding because there's no coding involved in a business plan. The goal for today is to complete the challenge, which is to write our own business plan. So we're trying to complete that local hack day challenge today. And we're going to do that through an example. Okay, so I'm going to switch my tab to a different share screen. And I'm going to share the screen for the Wooden Grain Toy Company. Okay, this is an example business plan provided by the Small Business Administration. And so we're going to follow along with this and create our own business plan. So let me actually, maybe I can just copy this over to my other document. Yeah, I'm going to copy this over to my other document and share it with you all. So hang on, everyone. Okay, so I've copied this business plan into a new Google document so that we can actually edit it ourselves. And actually, sorry, everyone. I want to share the screen in a way that's going to be easy for us to follow together. Okay, this should be helpful. So what I want you all to do is go to this link here. I'm going to post this link to the example from the Small Business Administration. I just posted it in the comments below. What this is an example template for a Wooden Grain Toy Company business plan provided by the Small Business Administration. And let me share my screen for you all. As you can see, there's a few different sections here, and there's some examples of text. And I also want you to open up your DevPost project. So I found an old DevPost project of mine that won the Best Project on .tech Domains Award, which now I guess we call the best domain name registered at domain.com. And it was a project called Drum Tech. And the goal of this project was basically to build a tool that would teach you how to play the drums. So you can see that we've got this live feedback and a Mayo armband you see on the arm that can see how you're moving your wrist. And we have this pebble, which is showing how fast you're moving your arm. And so that was the idea with this product. And to be honest, there wasn't a lot of business acumen involved in this project. So I wanted to see if we could try together to add a business plan. Okay. Yeah, Adam, that is young Steven right there in that picture. So there you go. So let's start this off, and we're going to call this instead of the Wooden Grain Toy Company, we're going to call this Drum.Tech Incorporated. Okay. That's the name of this company, Drum.Tech Incorporated. And I need to come up with an identity. The identity, if you recall from the business plan, from a lean model or actually we don't need to use the lean model for this. We can just use the company description. We want to talk about the business problem that is solved. Okay, so in the case of the Wooden Toy Company, children want toys for 3 to 10. So in this case, we probably want to say Drum.Tech educates and we want to think about our customer here, educates beginning percussion students aged, and I think it would be appropriate for us to give maybe an age range of maybe 3 to 18, you know, just people who are kind of younger, maybe in school. And so we could say through technology, right? And so what problem are we addressing here? Well, in the case of the wooden toy company, the problem was that parents and grandparents were looking for high quality, durable toys that will entertain kids and foster creativity. And so what I want to say here is parents, I actually want to say educators. So maybe parents and educators are looking for cost-effective, and let's say technically advanced tools that will educate in percussion music. Okay, so sorry everyone for that typo there. So now I've identified the identity, or more like a company description, maybe through innovative technology. And a problem, which is that parents and educators are looking for cost-effective, technically advanced tools that will educate kids in percussion music. And our solution is not going to be about any handcrafted toys. Remember, here we're talking about a good or a service. So our good is our drum education hardware and some of the competitive advantages of our drum education hardware. So instead of saying it's made from solid hardwoods and is designed with moving parts, these would be competitive advantages for the toy company. But we want to talk about the competitive advantages of our drum education hardware. So I want to say this is designed to give live feedback on skill and performance to young learners, young percussion learners, let's say. And then they say without limiting imagination. And I want to say in here, in a cost-effective manner and responsive manner, let's say. So what I mean by this is that an instructor does not have to be there to kind of teach the person. The person could practice for 10 hours on the drums, and they don't need an instructor there to say, you're doing it wrong, you know? So the technology is cost effective in that way. And the target audience, as I already said, is parents and educators. Specifically, those who are kind of looking after kids who want to learn to play the drums. Okay. And the competition, we need to talk a little bit about some of the competing services. So we have a market here, which is a niche market, wooden toys for children. Let me see if there's any questions first. You're semi-cutting out. That's unfortunate. I'm sorry about that. Hopefully things are a little better now. Let me know if you can't hear me anymore in the chat. But we want to talk about the market. So the market is the music education market is a growing market because more and more people are taking advantage of education. Is a growing, and the service economy is also growing. I'm actually not sure if this is true, but it just you know, for the purposes of our example, we can say the music education market is growing, is a growing market, and has a positive outlook. So this is where we're talking about the industry outlook. And then the competition is addressed. So there are two different companies that are listed here. And I want to say, traditionally, the need for music education has been fulfilled by human teachers, human instructors, which sell lessons at an hourly rate, let's say. And hopefully, let's see what it doesn't seem like anyone else has said anything about the quality of the sound. So hopefully it's gotten a little better over time. The revenue stream is that the music education, that drum tech will sell its products through an online store. And let's say sell and market its products. Not really getting into marketing yet, but maybe, well, let's just say sell for now then. Sell its projects through an online store. And maybe we'll also use the Amazon marketplace, maybe. That might be a common place to sell our technology. And the marketing activities, we could say that we might communicate with an email. I like the idea of using an email newsletter for drum.tech. We could talk about music education, what's new in music education. And actually, I quite like all of these. We can maybe say at in-person, we can maybe say, and in workshops, and in school workshops. Maybe we come up with some workshops. And what kind of expenses might we have? Well, we might need sensors and circuit design, circuit manufacturing. These are definitely going to be important for us. We also will need to employ some software engineers to develop and maintain the technology. And we have a team and some key roles. So I would say currently the team has 4 members. And actually my team had a bunch of members. I guess I'll not really name them too much here, but as profits increase, Drum Tech will look to add employees to assist with marketing and technological development, I could say. And then milestones, this is kind of an interesting section. I'm not actually sure if there's a milestone section in the official template. That might just be something extra that they're adding. Yeah, but it could definitely refer to revenue streams. So, how are we actually going to know whether we're being successful? And so as the business grows, right, we know we're going to be successful if we're able to advertise and target markets. Okay, so this is going to be the next stage in the process. So it would be the next stage in the drum.tech. We could say as business grows, drum.tech will advertise and target markets. Maybe instead of that, we would say we'll ship maybe beta versions of the technology to a select group of interested customers. Okay. So now I've got this business plan here. I'm going to share this with all of you so you can access it yourselves while you're working on your own projects. anyone with the link, I think, would actually be what I want here. Let me stop sharing my screen. Yeah, you're fine. Good. I'm glad that it came back. So I'm going to share that with you. And this is what you're going to be expected to submit when you do this. Beep boop, beep boop. Okay, so this is kind of the expectation that we have for you for this challenge, is to create this kind of lean startup format business plan. As you can see, it's not that hard to fill this out in a reasonable amount of time, which is why I kind of like this format for the hackathon stuff. You could definitely use this sort of thing in a hackathon where you only have 24 hours or 48 hours instead of having to write this 20-page document. Yeah, so definitely check that out. So folks, we're coming up to the end of the workshop here. I hope you learned something about small business, writing a business plan for your startup or whatever. I'm going to post some of these links again, just so you can check out the Small Business Administration and their resources. But does anyone have any questions before we kind of wrap up here about what a business plan is, or any questions about how to make one? You send the link in chat to yours. Again, absolutely, we'll do that. Milestones. What are milestones? So a milestone is something that indicates that it indicates an action that will happen next if your business is successful in meeting an objective. So in this case, for the lean business plan, it's not very specific, but it says as the business grows, Wooden Grain Toys will advertise in target markets, especially in advance of the holiday season. So that means that Wooden Grain Toys is expecting to have certain growth of businesses, learn more about their audience, learn more about their customers. And then before the holiday season, they'll do some targeted advertising campaigns now that they know some more about their customer and their business has grown a little bit, their presence has grown a little bit. So, and maybe their reputation has been established. So that's what a milestone is. It's some kind of marker indicating what the next action will be if a business reaches some goal. And someone else asks, how do you start a non-for-profit? So a non-for-profit is a legal structure. It's a legal structure in a business that requires the company to kind of not really report profits in its balance sheet, or actually, I think it's limited profits. And so those profits have to be invested back into the business in a certain percentage. It depends on where you are in the world. But the process to start a non-for-profit is the same in terms of business plan writing. It doesn't really affect the business plan, because a business plan is explaining how the company can be fiscally viable and arguing why people should get excited about your business. And so whether it's a for-profit business or a non-for-profit business, you'll still need to write a business plan to convince potential funders and mostly convince potential funders and refer back to throughout the course of your business, regardless of whether it's a non-for-profit or a for-profit legal structure. Any final questions from the chat? Let me see if I can start my camera again. I just wanted to say thank you all. It seems like oh, Adam says, how come you've got a different setup today? Because I'm traveling. Yeah, I'm traveling. So that's kind of why for today. But I'm glad people, found it useful. I hope this helps you create a nice deliverable for your challenge. And thank you all for tuning in to So Much Local Hack Day. I understand this is one of the later workshops, so thank you for sticking around. All right, everyone, take care.